Hey, I'm Richard Bewes here with the Bible. Let's look together. If you've got a Bible, you can open it at Psalm 11 and verse 3. These words, "When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do?" Did you know that every day in the British Parliament begins with prayers? One of the prayers includes these words, I read them. "Grant that we, having thy fear before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name." That's how the British Parliament begins every day, with prayers. And this is prayed then daily in the name of the political leadership of Britain. Now, anyone who knows our history can chart over these past years the steady undermining of the Christianity that originally, created our very lawmaking, leading to the language and terms of the Bible in common use, the establishing of churches and spires everywhere, the epic of the Reformation, the writings of Bunyan, the preaching of Spurgeon, the awakenings under Wesley, Whitfield, Moody, and Billy Graham, the rock face of marriage, the triumph of the Sunday schools, the hold that the Christian Sunday has always had upon these islands. Today, pretty much every step taken by political leadership across the West seems on dismantling the one mighty understanding of life that lifts a civilization, namely the Christian faith as set out in the Bible. They couldn't care less what the historian T.R. Glover once said when he wrote, "The Christian religion stabilizes society without sterilizing it." It seems that's all been forgotten. Even revisionist elements in church leadership today are caving in to today's cultural demands, apparently forgetting that the church exists not to mirror and copy the surrounding culture, but to challenge it. So we echo David's question. When the foundations are being destroyed, what can the righteous do? The answer is quite a lot, actually. You see, the Bible tells us when the foundations are shaking, first, stand firmly, don't get isolated. That's very important. Here is David in flight from King Saul, under threat from an oppressive regime. That's the background to the psalm. But look at his response to the friends who urge him to give up and make a run for it. Verse 1, "In the Lord I take refuge. How then can you say to me, flee like a bird to your mountain?" Hey, that's the temptation. When the leaders you trust in have apparently ignored the lessons of the past, when reckless political or social innovations are embarked upon, then you and I can be tempted mentally to go with the flow. Or when the upright in heart, verse 2, are being targeted by the arrows of the wicked, the believer can instead learn to say with David in verse 1, "In the Lord I take refuge." So David resolved to stand loyal to the Lord, who had never left him from the time of the defeat of the great giant Goliath onwards. He determined also to stand close to those others who remained faithful, and they would live to fight another day, knowing that with their refuge safely placed in God, tomorrow belonged to them. And Saul, one day he'd be gone. That's one secret that lies behind the ongoing march of Christ's family. For centuries, we have learned to outlast government after government. Dictators, coups, revolutions, ethnic cleansings, martyrdoms. Long after the time of Saul, it would be the Caesars, all-powerful, even godlike. More than one called himself Dominus et Deus, Lord and God. And they were the most powerful people in the world. Yet, one was killed by his own son, one went mad, one went blind, one was drowned, one was strangled, 2 committed suicide, 5 were assassinated, 8 were killed in battle. The last of them, before Rome began to go Christian, was the Emperor Julian, who had done his best to obliterate Christianity. But as Julian lay dying after a sword wound in 363 AD, it was said that his closing words were, "Vicisti Galilei, you have won, Galilean." That's it. The Church of Jesus Christ has never looked anything like powerful, not on its own, not at all. At times, of course, we have made terrible mistakes. But if it's in the Lord that we take refuge, who can stand against him? If we can only stand firm, never getting isolated, either from him or from each other, we will live to fight another day, even when everything else has gone. Stand firmly, then, is the message here from this psalm. Don't get isolated. What else can the righteous do when the foundations are being destroyed? Well, secondly, I suggest, see clearly. Don't get short-sighted. That's what this psalm seems to be indicating. We're to learn to see every situation as the Lord sees it. From his heavenly throne, the Lord, verse 4, observes the sons of men. His eyes examine them. So the eternal watcher is the Lord. He misses nothing. So what human attempts to destroy a nation's foundations can ever escape the eyes of Jesus? His eyes are like a flame of fire. And from knowing him, we too can learn to see precisely what is going on and to see beyond many short-sighted, vote-seeking political leaders. The foundations of any society never consisted of issues like inflation, taxes, petrol prices, housing, and those things, important as they are. But those things, they're only the scaffolding of a nation, and we dare not confuse scaffolding with foundations. Otherwise, we really have become short-sighted. I once visited the ruins of Knossos in Crete, one of the oldest cities in the world. And there, way ahead of time, they had developed an amazing scaffolding of civilization. Staircases, earthquake devices to stem off the problems of earthquakes, even sanitary systems, complete with flushes, all of that. But then Knossos died, apparently through violence. Many of its achievements had to be reinvented centuries later. The pattern seems to be that a nation falls from within itself. A Scotsman, after visiting the excavations at Knossos, declared, "The moral of Knossos is that good plumbing will not save a civilization." Here's David now, aware that Saul's regime is never going to last. He knows, and we must, that it was never the politicians, never the military who changed the world. Always, it's the ideas people. And here is an idea born in the mind of heaven itself? No, more than an idea, rather a person, Jesus, who has come among us to live, serve, die, rise, and to raise a family of belief worldwide. Are you part of that? Are you part of that? It's the biggest family of belief there has ever been. And this is done by the changing of someone's life. And then one life can change another life. Is that how it happened to you? Is that how it will happen for you? That's how ours became the greatest family of belief in the world. See it then as the Lord sees it, and we won't become short-sighted. Here's a third piece of action. Live uprightly, don't get intimidated. Verse 7, the Lord is righteous, he loves justice, upright men will see his face. Well, one of the earliest Christian martyrs, 1900 years ago, was a man called Ignatius. Ignatius was so concerned to take Jesus with him into every day that he earned himself a nickname, and people began to call him the God-bearer. Well, that could become your title and mine this very day. It only takes one upright person, and a whole street can be affected. A dead church, a dormant village, a nearby family, your very workplace. One person of such faithful uprightness, remembered ever since 1546, was a 25-year-old Anne Askew, who witnessed bravely at a time of persecution here in Britain. She refused to be intimidated from the very highest authorities. Eventually, she was taken to Smithfield in London and burnt to death publicly. Standing there in charge of all the proceedings were the Lord Chancellor of England and even dukes and religious bishops. But Anne Askew was the one forever remembered. Not them, not them. Let's close with verse 4. The Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord is on his heavenly throne. Hey, that's the real foundation. As the revival leader of Uganda, Festus Kavengere, once said, Satan can roar and shout, but he has no authority to shake the throne on which Jesus is sitting. We believe that. David had fastened his belief on this unshakable throne. Consequently, he stood firmly, never got isolated, saw clearly, never got short-sighted, lived uprightly, never got intimidated. What to do when long-built foundations are being destroyed? When a civilization falls, it usually falls from within. But such is the power of Jesus Christ, it doesn't take too many of his followers to stop that happening. Be one. Be such a one. God bless you today.